Now, I'm delighted to be joined by my fellow GB News presenter. He presents a weekday show, I don't know if you've noticed it, from 7 till 8 p.m. His name is Nigel Farage, president of the Reform Party, all-round political guru as the former leader of UKIP and, indeed, an MEP. Nigel.
Good morning.
Bristling with questions for you. First of all, do you think this is the last we're going to see of Boris Johnson in the political arena?
I think the anger that you saw there from Tobias Ellwood will become the mainstream view of the Conservative Party. I don't think he's got any future in the Conservative Party whatsoever. And this idea he'd be allowed to fight a safer seat than Uxbridge, well, hang on. He's effectively gifted Uxbridge to the Labour Party, and who knows, the other seats could go Lib Dem. We'll find out very shortly. So I think he will be seen to be doing damage to the party, his allies calling for a civil war. No, Boris Johnson's road with the Conservative Party is coming towards an end. That's
a really interesting caveat, with the Conservative Party. But he's got some road politically elsewhere.
If he wants to. I mean, that all depends on him. I mean, the way I see it, it's fascinating, Tobias Ellwood there saying, we inherited a lot of debt. Well, do you know how much they inherited? 700 billion of national debt. It's now 2.5 trillion.
Yeah.
And as you quite rightly questioned him, this Conservative government is now corporatist, globalist, shows no interest in bringing in the benefits of Brexit. Whatever they say about immigration, they have no intention to reduce these vast numbers of net migration that are coming into the country every year. This is now a full-on Social Democrat party.
OK, so are you saying there's an opening on the right for Boris Johnson? He'd have to pivot on a number of different issues, right? He's pro-immigration. That's going to play well, not going to play well with the right of the Conservative Party as it stands electorate.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got a group of MPs who are dedicated to Brexit and getting the benefits of Brexit. They want to bring numbers down. They want to help small business with deregulation. They actually believe in smaller government. But there are only about 36 of them. In fact, we're back to where we were at the time of the Maastricht Rebellion.
Yes.
We're back where we were 30 years ago. This is now, Hunt and people like that are the modern-day incarnation of the Howes and Herds of yesteryear. So, to your question, there is now a very big opening in British politics. Just as there was with Osborne and Cameron, with Miliband leading the Labour Party and Clegg.
Yeah.
And I used to say 10 years ago, you can't put a cigarette paper between them. And it was that gap that UKIP very effectively filled.
Sure.
I think the gap between Westminster and the country is now bigger than it was 10 years ago. I think the sense of broken Britain, the sense the health service doesn't work anymore, that people's kids and grandkids can't even get onto the housing ladder, I think these things are very, very real. And so there's an enormous opportunity there. Now,
you're talking about partnerships. You're talking about going into partnership with Boris Johnson.
Well, I disagree.
Have you considered that?
I disagree with Boris Johnson fundamentally on many of his metro-liberal views. But if anybody can turn on a sixpence and say they now believe in something completely different, it's Boris Johnson. The important thing to remember is this. On the biggest issue of our age, the biggest constitutional question we will face in our lifetimes, most likely, namely Brexit, that Boris actually was on the same side as myself and others. There are now, and I've heard it this morning, major Conservative donors and supporters who say they will never support the party again.
Right.
Now, maybe in 10 years they will, but they will never support the party again. So there is an opportunity, if Boris Johnson wanted to, and to use... And the good side of Boris, of course, is... just look at today's newspapers.
Yes.
He's very good at dominating news.
Yeah.
He does have personality. He does make people smile. And if he wants to defend his Brexit legacy, well, I want to defend my Brexit legacy too. So would there be a possibility of a new coming together on the centre-right? It'd be Boris Johnson. There'd be other MPs that would join in with this as well.
Have you discussed this with Boris Johnson?
Not with him directly, no. But I have discussed it with people very close to him and around him.
So you've given this some serious thought?
I've been very critical of the way that he handled government, very critical that the advantages of Brexit... I mean, in some areas we won, foreign policy, vaccine rollouts. I've been very critical, but what I think we now face is as soon as Sunak dropped the piece of legislation that would have got rid of thousands of EU laws, we knew that we're now effectively, without saying it, following alignment with what the EU is doing. That gives Labour, who are clearly, unless something seismic happens, going to win, that allows Labour to sign us back up to the single market. Before you know it, we'll be associate members of the European Union again. And I get a feeling that the Brexit battle is going to have to be refought in some way.
I mean, Starmer's ruled out what you're suggesting because he doesn't think there's an appetite for re-entering the EU, although I appreciate your point about alignment and shadowing. Sorry, let's just go back to this proposition of the Nigel and Boris party. I mean, you're president of Reform.
Yeah.
Can we have a definitive answer now? Are you going to be doing more frontline politics?
I haven't decided. I genuinely haven't decided.
Why not, when we're facing this, what you're saying is a very, very dangerous future of your precious Brexit project being reversed?
Richard Tice has got Reform to a respectable, decent position in the polls, and thank goodness.
But you need your help, right, to get it higher?
And I would need other people's help.
He's not got enough to win any seats, Nigel, as you know.
No, and do you know what? If I joined tomorrow and said, right, I'm giving everything up, I'm going to go campaigning full-time, I know exactly where we'd be. We'd be between 4 and 5 million votes. You know, we'd get more votes than UKIP got, but it's still not enough.
So how would you work with Boris if that... I know we're talking in the land of hypotheticals. A completely separate party?
No.
You want to pull him into Reform?
Do you know, setting up new political parties is a very difficult thing to do. Reform has a base, it has a structure. Who knows? I mean, maybe if the Brexit battle is going to be refought, we'll go back to the old name of the Brexit Party. Who's to say? I've said it for 6 months.
So you're talking about you might revive the Brexit Party?
Well, it is actually, Reform is the Brexit Party. It's just a change of name. If the Brexit battle has to be refought, that's what we'll do, obviously.
So you've still got an appetite for all this? Because I know you're pushing for proportional representation precisely for the point you've made, that you push a boulder up a hill and you don't get much in return.
Yeah. You see, in the past, it didn't matter. You know, even though I was immensely cheesed off in 2015 to get 4 million votes and 1 seat, but it was all pushing towards that great referendum. Now what we need, if we're going to bust British politics as it is, if we're going to recognise the fact that actually the differences between Labour and Conservative are pretty minimal, pretty marginal in every way, if we want a new kind of politics, the hope was that Brexit would give us a new kind of politics. It's still the old politics. It's still the Oxbridge politics. That's what we have in both parties.
I know, but then you're talking about pairing up with an Oxbridge candidate.
Yes.
An old Etonian. Could you work with him? Is there enough space in one political party, Nigel Farage, for Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson?
Well, I'm very easygoing, obviously. So we'll have... I mean, we are talking hypotheticals, but the whole Brexit project is under threat. We are a country in decline. This needs to be turned around. If we had PR, I'd give you very different answers. We don't. To break the first-past-the-post system, to break the mould, to quote a phrase from Roy Jenkins from 40 years ago, when they didn't quite do it, we're going to need a number of serious household names. It cannot be just seen to be me.
And what about the criticism that you can do this? I mean, we already know from the PR voting, or is it MRP voting, rather, in the week, that actually if Reform does stand candidates against the Conservatives, then you both lose and Labour wins.
Well, Labour win anyway.
Right.
Labour win anyway. And I mean, what Conservative Party? How are they even vaguely Conservative? Apart from the big corporates, whose side are they actually on?
So are you going to be holding meetings? I mean, after you leave the studio, what are you thinking? Are you going to phone Boris? Are you going to phone some donors? Are you going to get a little band back together?
Look, Boris Johnson did not expect that report on Friday. I doubt he's given this a moment's thought. But whilst everybody talks about the civil war, the potential civil war within the Conservative Party, I repeat the message. He's run out of road with the Conservative Party. If he wants a future in British politics, then he's going to have to take on something much bigger than he's ever done before. One
more question on another blonde. Trump, the indictment. Your reaction?
Extraordinary. I spoke yesterday to a former state attorney general, 2-term, 40 years a lawyer. He said never in his life had he seen a prosecution who, before they get to court, are releasing photographs of proof and evidence of why the suspect's done wrong.
Do you think it hampers his presidential ambitions to serve another term? I mean, it's not the greatest news for him, is it?
No, it's not, but it was expected.
Maybe it emboldens the fan base, I don't know.
It certainly emboldens the fan base.
The MAGAs.
I mean, look.
The MAGAs go mega.
I mean, be in no doubt about that. I mean, there is almost nothing that can happen that doesn't get Trump to win the nomination. The bigger question is, how much damage does this do to voters in the middle? How do they see this? Do they see this as an all-out political assault coming directly from the White House with the politicisation of the judiciary, or do they think, well, there's no smoke without fire? That question we can't answer at this stage, but none of this affects Trump, in my opinion, winning the
We're
nomination.
going to be discussing all that with Mick Mulvaney a little later in the show, so that should be good, his former Chief of Staff. Nigel, thanks for coming in on a Sunday. They work you hard here, don't they? And you're back on air tomorrow at 7.
Back on air tomorrow with a special.
Oh.
I can't say what it is.
All right. Very interesting.